Just said, yo, listeners. Welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. It's the IPL Super Over Show, number 6 for this IPL season. And there have been 61 of 70 league games played before the playoffs starting. Pretty soon, they'll come around very quick, but an exciting last week of action left. Paul, my co-host Paul Dennett, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Manners, I'm good. Hey, everyone. Geez, it's gone quick, hasn't it? It's gone quickly. It seems as though life is speeding up even faster than ever. That I can't believe that we've had 61 matches of the IPL. It just seems like 5 minutes ago that we started doing these. But one more week and then we're into the finals.
Yes, indeed. It's been another thrilling week and culminated in some stunning results on the weekend, all ends of the spectrum. So let's start with the power rankings to see where we are with the teams heading into the final week.
All right, well, let's start with just the table. So to give you a quick update, Gujarat Titans clear in front. They're on 16 points and they've got 2 games to go. CSK are second with only 1 game to go. They're on 15. Then Mumbai are third. They've also got 2 games to go. They're on 14. Lucknow are on 13. They have 2 games to go. Then there are 4 teams on 12. RCB, Rajasthan Royals, Kolkata Knight Riders, and Punjab Kings. But 2 of those, Rajasthan and Kolkata, have only got 1 game left to go. So in terms of who's likely to make the playoffs, although mathematically it's only actually Delhi that can't, there's a fair few teams that are really unlikely to make it. But in terms of the power rankings at the moment, Mumbai Indians have had a fantastic little period. They have won 2 of their last 4 games. They won their last 2 games and they've won 4 in their last 5. So after a relatively slow start to the season, they've come up into 3rd spot. Disappointingly, my man Tim David hasn't had the greatest of weeks, but Surya Kumar Yadav has been absolutely on fire for them. Also in the power rankings, KKR have had a pretty good little spell. They've won 3 of their last 4, but realistically, it's going to need a miracle for them to make the playoffs. So, Manners, I don't know if you've seen it there in the notes, but I've put in there with the percentage chances that if you sort of do a bit of maths with the betting odds as to the chances of the team actually winning. So Delhi Capitals, as I said, are actually eliminated. Sunrisers, Hyderabad and KKR to the nearest percentage chance of 0. Rajasthan and Punjab are 2 and 3. RCB are 9%, Lucknow 11%, but the big 3, Mumbai are 20%, CSK are 24%, and the defending champions, Gujarat, yet again, looking the goods, they are a 32% chance of winning according to the betting market. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Gujarat by far looked I wouldn't say they look the strongest team. They just look the most consistent, and they've just got this ability to win from anywhere. Rashid Khan can do anything for that team with the bat or ball. Interestingly, my team of the week last week, Delhi Capitals, have been bundled out of the competition a week after receiving that fine accolade of
it's
being
really
given
disappointing, isn't it? Because I'd kind of got onto a bit of a role supporting them just because I like Ricky Ponting. I like David Warner. It was going to be a nice news story, even if they didn't make the finals, but if they had a really strong end to the season. But the momentum that we were talking about that they'd built up in last week's show has kind of faded away. They're at rock bottom. As I said, they are mathematically eliminated. I don't know. I mean, I think has this damaged Ricky Ponting's brand as a sort of regarded as one of the great thinkers and great leaders of cricket? I think it's probably his brand has probably taken a bit of a hit.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that the team has performed so poorly, and one thing that seems to stick out to me is that it's not so much that any one individual player is bad, but I just feel they've got the whole balance of this top order wrong. So I think Mitch Marsh and Phil Salt aren't bad players, but I just don't think you can have both at the top of the order. And then when you add in David Warner, who's not the belligerent David Warner of the past, although we've seen patches of it, I think Ponting should have been smart enough to realize that you were going to get a more tempered Warner, and how you build the top order around it is important. And I don't think Mitch Marsh and Salt were the right characters, especially the fact that they're overseas players. And surely there was better suited players to the conditions in the market.
Yeah. They've had a few injuries, but that's not enough to excuse what's happened. I mean, every team gets some injuries. We'll come to it later in the show, but interestingly, they've got two of the best performed bowlers in the entire tournament. So it's really their batting that's let them down so badly.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So is that ball one done? The super over? Great. Well, let's move on to ball two. And well, you did. You smashed it. And then let's move on to ball two. And look, it's a little bit of a discussion I want to have with Paula around, what I think the viewer deserves from the commentators. And it came out of an incident that happened on Saturday at the Sunrisers home ground when they were hosting Lucknow Super Giants. And look, I will put on record that Paul and I are both cricket commentators in Australia. We do work for a couple of organisations, so we have some knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes, but not nearly at this level. So on Saturday, what happened was something happened on the field, and play was stopped. And I actually wasn't listening to the commentary, as is normal. And then I turned the sound up because I wondered why play had stopped. And I couldn't work out what had gone on. So then I went back through the footage, and I found what had happened was one of the Lucknow. So Lucknow was fielding, and the home team were batting, Sunrisers. And there was a disputed no ball call. And then play stopped, and it turned out an object had been thrown at the Lucknow players, a dangerous object. And you saw when you went back over the footage, one of the Lucknow players secretly hand an umpire the object. They tried to hide it, but you could certainly see something being handed to the umpire. And then play sort of was stopped for a while, and the commentators didn't say what was going on, and they just played highlights of the cricket. And then at some stage, Simon Doull said, I won't say what happened. And then the play resumed. And that was it. Now, I guess, so I then tweeted out, oh, look, I think an object has been thrown at a Lucknow player, but no, the commentators aren't saying what's going on. And I will preface this, the world feed we're getting is not the only commentary. So maybe on the local Indian commentary or in some other language commentary, they actually said what was going on. But this is just the feed I saw. And Lisa Sthalekar replied to my tweet, former Australian cricketer, that she concurred with my assessment of what had transpired out in the middle. So Paul, I guess I want to throw to you the first question. Are the restrictions put on commentators by whoever runs the IPL too much when a commentator can't actually say what's happened in front of them?
Yeah, of course there are. There should be no restrictions from a moral standpoint, but also from a pragmatic standpoint. The IPL is so big and so successful, they don't need to censor things. I mean, Indians are quite rightly very proud of the fact that when you look at the some metrics, the IPL is second only to the NFL in terms of the money that it's bringing in per game. It's a juggernaut. They don't need to have censorship. That it's self-defeating. And as a viewer, if you're watching it with any level of kind of attention, your instincts straight away realize when something's wrong. I've seen it before I think it was in an ICC event where something happened that it was like an umpiring controversy, and I was eagerly awaiting the scrutiny that the commentators would naturally apply, going back replay after replay, discussing it, opinions, forensically assessing it, and I got nothing. And I realized, this is an ICC event. Clearly, they are under instructions not to try to bring the game into what they think is a state of disrepute. It's not. If you allow the commentators to just say whatever, it brings a level of robustness to the coverage and a level of authenticity to the coverage. Plus, it's box office television. That if they were suddenly starting to talk about something that had been thrown on the field or something like that, if you could have a tracker of the ratings every minute, the ratings would go up because no one's turning away at that moment. It's a highly exciting point in the coverage. So I just think it's self-defeating. I think it's dishonest. I can understand why they want to control everything, but just let it up there. Let it go. Let the commentators say whatever they want, and it will ultimately be to the benefit of the league.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, and I think that's what I want to say. It was very disappointing that professional commentators can't actually say what's happening in front of them, that the game has been stopped because an object has been thrown at a player. Just not being able to make that statement seems ridiculous and farcical. I don't know if that implicit restriction was put on the commentators. Sometimes it's inferred what you can say, so I'm not sure. I do understand commentators being asked to put a positive spin on things. And Paul and I have said we will put a positive spin on whatever cricket tournament you want us to pay to commentate on. And you know what I would have said, Paul, if I was commentating, oh, it's really disappointing what's happened, but look how well the umpires are handling this. And you can see the two teams talking about it in a great spirit, shows how well the IPL's played. It's, one disappointing action from one fan. It doesn't reflect the fan base here. We always have a great time at Sunrisers, and hopefully the officials get under control. And then you throw to the highlights. You can walk past, you can sort of move on from it in a positive way without ignoring it. So,
well, maybe, but if you've got the director in your ear saying, "Oh, by the way, Menas, if you mention that the door's that way, you can never come back," then my attitude is always, we joke about it, we'd say anything, but in all seriousness, I don't blame the individual commentators. That it is a massive opportunity at the peak of your career. If you're going to say to the IPL world, no, unless you give me carte blanche to say whatever I want, then I'm not going to go over there and do it. Well, I think that's a fair bit to ask of someone. We've talked before about Ian Chappell and Michael Holding, who have bravely stood up to these sorts of things. And I have enormous respect for both of them for what they did. But they both were at the very end of their careers and they didn't need the job. So they kind of were in that position where they could do that. If you're a younger commentator and trying to forge a career, it's a very big thing to suddenly just try to stand up to them. And you shouldn't have to.
Absolutely. I'm not blaming the commentators. I mean, you have to put food on the table, you have to pay the grocery bills and all that stuff. So it's not a slight on those commentators in particular. But, so I guess on that then led me to think, when we commentate, or I've been given certain guidance, so obviously guidance around language. One organization, just you can't swear and you have to sign paper around that because it's a broadcast on Australian TV and they get fined if you break that. And I've been given things, stick to sort of cricket topics. If you want to have a chat about stuff, try and make it just about, other cricket that's going on, which makes sense. That does. I don't want to sort of bordering off into my opinions of politics and stuff on a cricket broadcast, but I've never been given sort of really tight restrictions. Obviously, it's at a much lower level, so that's the sort of stuff I've been given. And then you often get given stuff about sponsors. These are the sponsors. You can talk about sort of these sponsors, but don't talk about any of their competitors. But I guess, Paul, how much would you take? Like, if the IPL series said, "Come over, but here's all the things you can't talk about," would you go?
Yes. I mean, they'd have to, for me to say no, if the IPL said, "Would you like to come and commentate?"
Yeah.
They would have to, I don't know what they'd have to say to me for me to say no. If they said part of your commentary deal is that you need to spruik cigarettes to kids every 5 seconds, I might stop at that. But
okay, well, can I just ask you then? So Ian Chappell was told he's not allowed to talk about DRS. Now this is one of the biggest highlights of your life. He's talking about DRS. They said you can come, but you cannot talk about DRS.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because that was back. They wouldn't do that now, but they did do that, as you said, back a decade ago when India weren't having DRS, and it was a very specific issue because they still had the Hawkeye technology, and there'd be instances where they would show, if they wanted to say, "Oh, here's something interesting on Hawkeye, showing the length of the balls being pitched and where they're, something like that." But then all of a sudden there'd be a big LBW appeal. The umpire would give it whatever. The players would clearly be aggrieved, and you're hanging out for the DRS replay, the Hawkeye replay, and they wouldn't show it. And that was ridiculous. And that's where Ian Chappell wasn't willing to cop it. But again, as I said, as much as I admire him immensely for doing that, he was at the end of his career. He had plenty of other gigs on. He didn't need it. if they come out of the blue and ask me and say, they're not going to say that you can't talk about DRS now, but if they were to do that, I'd say, sure, I've never heard of DRS. What is it?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
It's some sort of Formula One term, isn't it?
Terrible. Worst thing ever.
Some sort of that joke would have worked better if you knew anything about Formula One, Menace.
Yes, I have no idea what you're talking about. Is it a brake system?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess then I'm sort of similar to you, but if it got to a point where someone's thrown an object on the field like that, and I've got a director saying you can't talk about it, I would talk about it, and I absolutely would. I would just be off we go.
What's the match fee of a typical commentator there? Like, what are they getting per game? 10
well,
grand?
for us, it'd be, pie and chips and a bus ticket home. But
no, but if you're on the coin that they're on, and they said, "Listen, you can still stay."
I'm saying me. I would be like, "Excuse me," and I would just go. Because I would be that big. If I'm being asked to commentate on the IPL, I'm held in that high regard. I can get other commentary jobs, but I can't get my integrity back. So that to me would draw a line.
We've got into a very nice fantasy world here, but I like it.
So look, that's all. Yes, I just think that it's implicit on other commentators. Sorry, not maybe other commentators, but also the cricket community to push back against this kind of controlled commentary. Like,
the ones who should push back are the senior Indian commentators, Ravi Shastri and Harsha Bhogle and Sunny Gavaskar and those types should really be the ones saying, hey, come on, we're bigger and better than this. We don't need to have this level of censorship.
But talking a game up, I'm all for. Like, and I'm not being, if you watch me talk about, commentating cricket, sometimes I make a forward defense sound like it's a forward defense in a grade game sound like it's a World Cup final and it's the last ball. But anyway, all right, that's my ball. Just wanted to have a chat about the commentary. So that's 2 balls of the 6th ball over. Paul, over to you.
All right, so looking at the Aussie Watch for the week, pleasing to see that Nathan Ellis has returned for Punjab Kings. He took 1 for 29 off his 4 overs when they played Kolkata. Maxwell's been in great form. He smashed 68 from 33 against Mumbai. Berendorf took some wickets. Poor old Tim David, as I said, hasn't had the greatest week, out for a golden duck in that game. Then Mitchell Marsh bowled really well, 3 for 18 off 3 overs in a game where David Warner was out for a duck, but Marsh hasn't been getting that many runs. Tim David failed again. Cameron Green's not getting a great deal of a hit. And Stoinis got a 40-odd. Mitchell Marsh's impressive bowling record was given a bit of a tap when he went for 21 off 1 over. And David Warner played his most aggressive innings of the series, of the tournament so far, in a pretty disappointing losing effort. 54 from 27, a strike rate of 200 in that game. Nathan Ellis 2 for 26. Glenn Maxwell had a barnstorming game for RCB against Rajasthan. He scored 54 off 33 in a pretty slow effort, and then chipped in for a wicket as well. Got the key wicket of Hetmeyer. Rajasthan Royals got bowled out for 59, of which Hetmeyer scored 35. So he scored 59% of the runs. Almost a Bannerman moment there. So that's the week. For Adam Zampa took 2 for 25 in that game as well. So it's a fairly decent return there. So that's the week for the Aussies. We'll cut to their averages. But, Manners, you want to add anything about your thoughts on the Aussies this week?
I liked what I saw from Glenn Maxwell with the bat. He looked good in the bits I saw. And Cameron Green just continues to impress, just like what I'm saying. He's dropped down the order from Mumbai, which I think is probably better for him, take a bit of the pressure off him. But just like what I see with the ball in the field, and I actually think the Australian team really going to benefit from it. But yeah, probably Maxwell to stand out, but it's very quiet for the Aussies. I mean, Warner and Marsh to Delhi, but it's Zampa bowled well. Bowled well on Sunday night.
Yeah, but Maxwell's been the star, and his figures now, he's averaging 35 for the tournament at a strike rate of 183. And it's very stark, the comparison with Warner. Average is almost the same. Warner averaging 32, but a strike rate of 127. We keep on going back to it, but you think of how aggressive and he was for so long. And he has improved a little bit, but that's a pretty low output for him. Stoinis averaging 25, strike rate of 142. Green averaging 40, strike rate of 149. Tim David still strike rate of 166, average of 26. So his figures aren't that bad. Just hasn't had the greatest of weeks. And Mitchell Marsh disappointing with the bat, averaging only 14, strike rate of 132. Mitchell Marsh is the most economical, along with Hazelwood of the Aussies, going at only 8.4 runs and over. Ellis at 8.6 has done pretty well as well. So, yeah, as you say, reasonably quiet sort of period for the Aussies, peppered with a couple of highlights, especially from Maxwell.
All right, that is Aussie Watch. Now to ball 4, and another talking point. Come up with the talking points. Paul's come with the stats. But big news out of Australia. The Big Bash has been shortened, so it has gone from a 14-round season to a 10-round season, which reduces the total number of games by 16 games in that first stage. It looks like they're actually going to adjust the finals as well with the Big Bash. But just looking at the league stage primarily, Paul. So the Big Bash has been shortened. At the moment, the IPL league season is 70 games with 10 teams. The IPL chairman has said that in the season after next, they're going to move to an 84-game season, which will add 10 more league games. And then after that, they might go to a 94-game season, another 10. So firstly, do you think the IPL is too long now with 14 games and they should shorten the tournament to match the Big Bash?
No, I don't think it is too long. I think that by all the metrics, it's an absolutely barnstorming success. Everything I can see is that everyone in India is lapping it up, and if anything, they're probably feeling sad that it's coming to an end. It is an interesting point, though, that the Big Bash, when it moved to a proper full home and away season, that extra bit is commonly regarded as it was a little bit of a bridge too far. That's what the IPL intends to do over these coming years. It might sound, what are they jumping up, adding all these games? But by going to a 94-game tournament, that is actually going to be a proper home and away league. The 4 games of the finals, the 90 games is allowing each team to play the other team once home and once away. Now, at the rate that they're currently doing it with kind of a fair few double headers, they get through about 10 games per week. So that's 9 weeks plus a week for the final. That's 10 weeks. That's 2.5 months. I think it's inevitable that it's going to go to that length. I think it's going to be successful at that length. And at the moment, although he said that there's no intention of increasing the team numbers, that's going to be the tipping point for me, that in 5 years' time or 8 years' time, there will be a strong temptation to say, tell you what, if we added another 2 teams and they all had a home and away season, that's 132 games. That's 13 weeks. That's a 14-week tournament. You look at how successful it is, and they will start to look at other competitions around the world and say, well, the English Premier League goes for the best part of 9 months. One of the shortest competitions is the NFL, which kind of is September through to sort of January only. The IPL is still shorter than that. I think there will be an appetite to increase it, and I think it's something that world cricket needs to get on the front foot with and sort of say, let's give them that 10-week window, but let's put a stop on it at that point, and otherwise it's it will then become too long.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, because I think what you're seeing is with the size of the length of the competition now, like teams are starting to drop out. So Delhi are out, Sunrisers, they're still in it mathematically, but they're very unlikely to make the finals from here. So you can see that the longer the competition goes, the games do become less relevant, even in a very tight ladder like we're seeing at the moment. You get lots of great games, but there's going to be a few duds along the way. So if you add on then, 2 more rounds when they increase it, and then 2 more rounds when they increase it again, you run the risk of, if a team is out now and they've got another 5 rounds to play, that's a pretty bit of a slog to the end if you're a viewer and a fan.
Yeah. I'll tell you what they should do is keep it at 10 teams and don't succumb to the temptation, which they're saying they won't at the moment, of going beyond that. But I don't know, is it pie in the sky to put in a second tier at some point and have two tournaments going simultaneously, where you then get the relegation thing, and that you then, instead of Delhi at the moment, any Delhi fan saying, well, what's the point of me watching? It would suddenly be captivating because we need to win another game. Otherwise, we're going to be playing in the the ICL, the Indian Championship League next year against lesser teams. I don't know. It's probably a long way off, but that would be the ultimate I think they should be aiming for.
Well, I think that's the future. I think, our kids will, and their kids, that's what they'll be looking at, a massive system like that in India. But I actually think probably something they could do sooner to keep it relevant is move to a conference style system where you had like 2 conferences of 5 and the top 2 of those went through. So, if you're in that conference, you're going to have to be playing pretty badly to like drop out of it, contention. So, it's like they do in baseball, like they do in the baseball
all
standings.
American sports, they do it that way. Yeah.
So that's what I do. And then the last question. So, okay. So I guess both of us have fears about the expansion, but we're happy with the length at the moment. What about the IPL expanding across the globe? Do you think the fact that they're starting to sort of prop up other tournaments, that's taking away from the sort of, the luster of the IPL, the fact that you get to see these franchises in action all year in other countries?
It's a very good question. I don't think it's going to take away from the luster of the IPL. I do wonder how successful some of those other tournaments would be. And we've talked about it before, that if it ultimately ends up that the cricketing calendar is primarily T20 leagues, but with defined windows for Test cricket, I can live with that as long as it's as long as it's done properly. But I do think it means that the bilateral 50 over games and even the bilateral T20 games at the international level surely are going to be the ones that get squeezed out. That I could envisage a future where you could almost have it such that you have the start of the year is kind of T20 leagues in Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and maybe Bangladesh and wherever. Then you move across to some the Pakistan Super League, the IPL, then some Test cricket in England and West Indies, then the CPL and the 100, and then some Test cricket in India and Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So a spot for an ICC event, a World Cup. Then you conclude the year with Test cricket in Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, and you might end up having leagues in competition with each other. That it might have to be that the CPL, the Caribbean Premier League, and the 100 or whatever they're going to call it in England, go bang bang right head to head, and it's just whomever can get the best players. And it's kind of like, that's what happens in soccer, that the Italian league's going on at the same time as the Premier League, as the German league, and as all the leagues. I don't know. It's the sort of thing that you play this back in 10 years' time and it will sound fanciful because something completely different might happen. But that's the way it looks like it's going.
Yeah, I just think if the IPL throws all this money into other leagues and we get these sort of star-studded leagues propping up everywhere, then the IPL kind of loses its specialness because, what's great about the IPL now is it's head and shoulders above every other T20 league in the world.
Yeah.
But it's not that far ahead now. I mean, it is not that far ahead that other countries, if a lot of money is put into their leagues, then they couldn't start to catch up. So,
I think the problem is that while ever the BCCI don't let Indian players play in other leagues, that's the big advantage. One of the many big advantages that the IPL has. No matter how much money you pump into another league, if you don't have Indians playing in it, yeah.
And I guess, is too much. Can there be too much cricket? I guess I only sort of look at another sport like football in England. Like you would think that there would be too much football for a football fan in England with all the competitions and games on every night and games on all weekend. But I don't think any football fans in England are complaining about too much football. And I'm sure the same would be said for cricket fans in India, but also around the world.
It's just incredible, the football season. And I've been over there I remember I was there one night in, it was like the classic off season. It was the middle of June or something like that. There was a Tuesday night in the middle of June, and there was finally no football on. And there was he was at some windswept park for some trophy I'd never heard of in the 7th division. And they were reporting upon that as though it was the World Cup final. And I was just like, yeah, I like football, but these people love it. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
All right.
Now we're going to take a quick break, Paul. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with the last 2 balls of the over and listener questions. I'm going to plug in my computer so it doesn't shut off in the middle of the show, which would be embarrassing. I'm not Jelisa. We'll be editing that bit out. But for those watching live on YouTube, you get to keep that zinger in there. All right. Welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. I'm Menas. I'm with Paul Dennett. It's our super over show. So 6 balls of the hottest IPL topics and some great chat so far. But we're up to ball 5. Paul, from the Randwick end.
I come from the Randwick end. Well, they've got the orange and purple caps in the IPL for the most runs and the most wickets. And we've said that they should get a cap for the most economical bowler and the most power-hitting batter. So let's do that. So first of all, we'll report on the actual ones. The orange cap for most runs, Faf du Plessis, 631. Pretty comfortably clear of Jaiswal. And then Conway, so 575 and 498. Surya Kumar Yadav, Shubman Gill, and Kohli coming along there next. But the more pressing one, surely, and I've decided that I will christen it as we were in Sydney, so we're going to call it in terms of the Sydney teams in the Big Bash. We'll call it the lime green cap, and the magenta cap for the Thunder and the Sydney Sixers. And so let's start with, I think, where have I got this here? You might be able to tell I'm padding as I've lost my spot in the...
That's all right. I'll just fill.
You're an old pro.
Sydney Thunder. So the Thunder should be is that the batting cap or the bowling?
Yes, the lime green cap is the highest strike rate. Now, the thing that annoys me whenever you look up the strike rate is that they have, Fred Smith, who's scored 30 runs off 6 balls, and he's number 1. It's like, no, I don't want to. You're going to have some sort of minimum criterion here, and that is 300 runs is what it's going to be.
Okay.
So at the moment, in first place, Surya Kumar Yadav with a strike rate of 191. And he scored 479 runs. So that's nothing like a kind of a wobbly, dodgy stat. That is robust. Our man, Glennie Maxwell, is second on 182.9. Heinrich Klaasen will be third because he's only scored 262 runs and he's on 180.7. Once he gets a few more, same as Nicholas Puran on 292 runs and a strike rate of 173. Ajinkya Rahane on 169.9 only has 282 runs as well. I'm saying them because by the end of the tournament, you would think they will have reached their 300 level. But currently in third place is Yashavi Jaiswal from Rajasthan Royals, who has a strike rate of 166.2. So Yadav first, Maxwell second, Jaiswal third. Faf du Plessis still up there. He's in about 5th position in the race for that cap with a strike rate of 154. So he's in contention for both caps, but as it stands, it's Surya Kumar Yadav's to lose.
Geez, cricket's a funny game, Paul, isn't it? Because, when Sky came into this tournament, didn't you have that run of ducks in the series against Australia? And everyone thought, is this the end for our man Sky? Well,
and a couple in the IPL as well. Like there's a point at the IPL where I distinctly remember him walking off and feeling really sorry for him. It's like, all this promise. You're looking pretty ordinary, but wow, he certainly turned that around. Moving to the wickets, the purple cap is Rashid Khan at the moment on 23, followed by Yuzvendra Chahal on 21. Chawla, Mohammad Shami, and Varun are on 19, as is Deshpande. So those are the ones for the purple cap. But for the real one that matters, the magenta cap, the best economy rate, minimum of 30 overs is what I've described that you have to bowl. And our man Akshar Patel from the Delhi Capitals with an economy rate of 6.8 leads Kuldeep Yadav from the Delhi Capitals with a strike rate of 7.11. And that's what I was referring to at the start of the show. Isn't that incredible that the two leaders in the time-honored magenta cap both play for the hapless Delhi Capitals?
Look, I knew the Delhi Capitals batting was bad, but that really highlights how bad it's been because they bowl pretty well at times, but it's just been an absolute disaster with the bat. So great performance by them and great stuff with those caps.
Yeah, so I think that it'll take off. It surely should. Just to run you through a couple of the others, Jadeja, the absolute legend that he is, in third place, 7.22. Krunal Pandya, 7.26. Moeen Ali is 7.50. And Ashwin at 7.51. So Ashwin and Jadeja, two of the greatest Indian cricketers of all time, figuring prominently in those stats.
It's going to look weird, like at the end of the games and tournament, like putting Big Bash franchise hats on players at the IPL, but I think it could work. All right.
Well, they've done it. They've basically they've got the Hobart Hurricanes hat and the Perth Scorchers hat, don't they? Really?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So final ball of the over, and I just wanted to sort of highlight some of the batting exploits of this week, because there's actually been some pretty crazy stuff happening with the Willow. Wouldn't want to be a bowler this week. Well, you mentioned Rashid Khan with the ball. You'll see 10 sixes in one innings. What a cricketer!
He's amazing.
What a cricketer! Yeah, don't forget Rashid Khan with the bat. Surya Kumar Yadav scored his first ever IPL century. He's made 3 T20 centuries for India, but he made 103 not out of 49 balls against Gujarat. And it was his, as I said, first ever IPL ton. At that stage, it was the 4th IPL ton of the tournament. And then the next night, Prabhis, I think I've spelled this name wrong. Prabhis, yeah, I added some extra letters in there. Prabhis Singh.
It's Prabhis. I think you've added an extra letter in there.
Yeah, I have. Prabhis Singh scored 103 of 65 balls for the Punjab Kings versus the Capitals. Tremendous performance, dominated the scoring in that innings. It was Bannerman-esque. So that was the 5th ton of the tournament. So good week for the batters so far, but it got better on the weekend. So in that game on the weekend, so Lucknow Super Giants basically almost killed by objects thrown at them from the stand. So, they're playing under extreme duress, Lucknow. They're chasing 183 to win. And Nicholas Pooran came in and hit 44 of 13. Hit 4 sixes and 3 fours to lead Lucknow to victory when they were really struggling. They needed at one stage almost 14 runs and over. And then Pooran just iced it with 44 off 13. That's a 338 strike rate. But the batting performance of the week was, you mentioned it before, Yashavi Jaiswal made the fastest ever IPL half century, 50 off just 13 balls. So that was for the Rajasthan Royals against KKR. So that's the fastest ever IPL century. It's not the fastest ever T20 century. That's 12 balls. Half century, sorry. So the fastest 13 ball century would be pretty incredible. So fastest ever 50 off 13 balls. 12 is the overall record in international cricket. Yuvraj Singh did that. And actually, Gale did it in the Big Bash as well in 2016. And also Hazratullah Zazo from Afghanistan did it as well. But the fastest ever IPL 50, quite incredible. But if you are a Rajasthan Royals coach, so this week, they chased down 1 for 151 in 13.1 overs against KKR. Improved their net run rate. Big win. Jaiswal breaks the record. You can imagine they're all smiles. They finished the weekend, as you mentioned, Paul, being bowled out for 59 against RCB. So,
third lowest total for a completed innings in IPL history. Second lowest was the same franchise with 58. And then the lowest total ever was RCB with a total of 49 back about 6 years ago.
All right, so that's it. And I just wanted to, I just looked at the boundary count. And when you look at these figures, Paul, it is actually just mind-blowing. There's been 918 sixes so far. And the thing is, I know they flash up, but when you're watching a mini or whatever, they flash up really quickly. You don't get a chance to digest it. Almost 1,000 sixes and 1,761 boundaries. That's an average of 44 a game. It's pretty good. I can say why it's very good.
won't surprise you at all that I've discovered a piece of gold on YouTube that previously I'd never seen anything like this, but there's suddenly appeared extended highlights of a match from 1961 between Australia and England. It's a famous game where Richie Benaud bowled Peter May around his legs, but they've got about 45 minutes of highlights. And back in those days, they did that weird thing where they'd show random bits of highlights, and every now and again they'd show 3 or 4 balls in a row for no reason, and you'd actually get a feel for the actual coverage. And Brian Johnston was commentating, and he was really having a go at the England players, saying, they really should be getting a move on now, and it's really disappointing that they're not. And then Ken Barrington was batting, Bob Simpson was bowling, and Barrington jumps down the wicket and defends him wide of mid-on, and they take a single. And the comment, there's a bit of footwork there, and the crowd sort of rises as to say, okay. We're having a go at you for not playing bright cricket. Well, we were wrong because you've just hit a single. And it was just like this feeling of rippling around the crowd of, this is pretty cool. So if any of those are still alive and watching the IPL, things are
how many sixes did Bradman hit in his Test career?
I always forget this. I think it was something like 4 or something like that. And one of them was off a no ball back in the day when because it was the back foot no ball rule, you heard it quickly enough that you could actually have a swing. But to be fair to him, that with the bats that they used and with the unroped boundaries, and they didn't spend any time in the gym, but there's I've seen some of the footage of it, like that they can absolutely smack one on the MCG, and it goes out 90 meters and doesn't reach the boundary, and they might run 5. So the percentages of trying to hit a 6 just weren't there. And Brad was just so pragmatic. He just thought, why would I risk an extra 2 runs when I probably won't hit it for 6 anyway, and I give myself a chance of being caught? I'm sure if he was around in the IPL today, he would, and if he was a professional, he'd be in the gym like a psycho. He'd build up Popeye forearms, and he'd have hit an 8-ball 50. That's not quite possible. A 9-ball 50.
Oh, absolutely. He'd be the best player in the IPL by a mile. But you spoke about some of the reasons why players didn't hit sixes, longer boundaries, fences, no ropes, bats that weren't as big as tree trunks and all that stuff. And the games were totally different. But, when I read out a stat, 918 sixes, early on, like when, before T20, when I was watching cricket, like you might see you'd see a few sixes or something. Like in a one-day game, maybe at the end, if Simon O'Donnell was having a great game, he'd hit a couple. But like if someone hit a 6, you would run from like wherever you were to watch it on TV because there weren't going to be that many.
Ian Botham in 1985 came out when England was commanding position at Edgbaston and hit his first ball for 6, hit his next ball for 4, and hit his third ball for 6. And he said, people used to say of me that I emptied out bars, and I could see it this day, people actually running out of the bars to come and watch. And that, they talk about that all these years later because it was just so abnormal for the time. That 50 off 13 balls, when I was growing up, anytime anyone got a 50 off under 40 balls, which was extraordinarily rare, that felt like it was pushing the boundary. Like 50 off 38, 50 off 39, I was like, ooh.
They've broken the sound barrier.
Exactly, yeah. That's we'll have to have a recount. That's got to be wrong. But 50 off 13. Remember, was it Afridi who got 100 off 37 against Kenya, and for a long time that was the fastest 100.
Yes.
And that just, I remember at the time thinking that's just ridiculous. I can't even imagine that. But this guy's on and going on for 100 off 26 ball pace the way that he was going. It's incredible.
I just think there's no limit. I mean, when I watch a game now, I just, you sort of think anything's possible, and fair play to some of the bowling in this tournament. They've defended a few targets because it's just quite incredible. So great week for the batters.
But I do think that they need to have the longer boundaries. That I'm all for batters getting rewards, but sometimes when they really shank one and it clears the fence and it clears the rope and you look up and it's a 62-meter 6, you just think, well, that's not really how it's meant to be. But yeah, it's a small price to pay.
But is that just the way we think about cricket? Because we've grown up in Australia that has some of the biggest grounds in the world. I mean, there aren't many countries that have grounds as big as ours. So is that just an Australian view of cricket and not actually cricket?
It's a good question. I don't think that's true. I mean, Harsha Bhogle, for one, is I think pretty keen for the boundaries to be made bigger, certainly in the WPL. But I think that when you rope them in and you give the bats that are so powerful, that it just doesn't look right. Where if you hit a six and you don't quite middle it, and it kind of just sails into the crowd, yeah, that's fair enough. But when you hit one that you've got nowhere near the middle of the bat on it, and really the bowler has beaten you for all that matters on that ball, I think that's not ideal for that to be going for six.
Yeah. All right. So we've got a couple of listener questions here. So that's the end of the Super Over. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the IPL Super Over. We've just got a couple of quick questions here before we get out of here. We've gone very long. Martin Lawrence has, he said he thinks the answer is 3 sixes for Bradman. So we will check that, and Paul will correct you as soon as possible. Martin Lawrence, surely Jelisa can't be as bad as technology as me. Well, Martin, she is probably worse, and I don't know you, but pretty sure no one could be as bad as her. So you win. I'm telling you, you win.
I've got the answer.
Yes.
6 sixes in his Test career, and he hit 618 fours.
Okay, great. All right, Sharada M. No disrespect to Matt Short, but he doesn't look ready for higher honours. Is the BBL a good enough league to select future Oz T20 teams? Well, Sharada, it's a very good point. I do not think Matt Short has had a great IPL. He probably does look a little bit short of that class. I'm not ruling it out in the future, but I think you get some pretty good players out of the Big Bash, Paul.
Yeah. And obviously, if the Australian players were in there, as they should be, then the standard would be even higher. But it's a sort of an age-old question in Australian selections that we sometimes have our top players not playing all that much international T20 cricket, and all these players who then excel in the Big Bash sometimes don't get a look in, and we fall back on the sort of tried and true, but they tend to perform a little bit better. That some of the stars out of the Big Bash, people like Ben McDermott, have kind of, of that ilk, have never really made it big on the international stage just yet.
All right, great questions, everybody. Martin's hit a couple of other ones, but we will be talking about some other cricket topics soon. So Martin will hit those up soon. Lots of Cricket Unfiltered's coming this week. So we've got an Ashes hot stove on Wednesday with John Norman from Talk Sport. Just want to dive in there. Jimmy Anderson's done his groin. There's a bit happening over there. Ben Stokes under an injury cloud. So I think, Paul, it's time to just see what's happening with the old enemy as the Ashes is coming at us very quickly.
Sounds good.
And also hoping to do a bit of a chat with Paul and Jelisa about the cricket news, because Australia's announced its international schedule for next summer. Paul and Jelisa are fired up about it, so I can't wait to unleash
I'm ready to get nuclear.
Unleash them, yeah. Cricket Australia, watch out at Joel Limont. Dennett's about to drop a bomb. And and I've booked 3 great interviews for Men's Masterclass. So I'll be announcing those soon. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back soon.
See you all.